Yeah, my name's Stephen Campbell. I was a draftee, drafted in 1963. And I thought I was just about out of the Army. In July of 1965, I got reassigned to Fort Benning, Georgia, and they made up the 1st Cav Division out of the 11th Air Assault and whoever else they could grab around the countryside. I came out of a infantry unit. I was an infantryman. And I got my first helicopter ride in Fort Benning. And then we got deployed. They put us on a ship in Charleston, South Carolina. And we went on that ship around through the Panama Canal and up and across to Quignon, just off the coast of Quignon. And we landed. The ship stayed out of sea a ways, and we went on to land on an old World War II landing craft. And we flew us about 30 miles west into a place they called On Cay. They was just starting to base there. There was very little there. There was a landing strip they called the golf course. It was a place where they kept the helicopters, and they had a fixed wing airstrip also. And so we started trying patrols and patrolling out of On Cay, and nobody knew what they were doing. I mean, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't even have good maps. And we had aerial photos with lines on them. That was our maps. And we'd go out wandering around and looking for people. But then I was getting real close to getting out, because when I went over, I only had 5 months left. And I was getting real close to get out. And then I was with the B Company, 2nd, 7th Cav, and we were doing brigade security at a tea plantation where the big shots were, colonel and so forth. And then we got a call that the 2nd and 7th Cav had landed in a LZ, and they were being overrun by North Vietnamese regulars. So we got gathered up and dropped into that. And that was a Battle of the Ia Drang Valley. That was what they made the book about and the movie. Well, we went in there and my company actually first night was in reserve. I think everything was behind us. But the next day, the company behind us had really got beat up. They'd really taken a lot of casualties the night before. So my company, we went over and we dug deeper foxholes and got ready for night. Then that night we had a big attack. I mean, several attacks, and we had the North Vietnamese were using bugles, basketball type whistles. You see lights coming down off this mountain. They call it Chu Pong Massif. See lights coming down off the mountain. And we were way outnumbered. I don't know how bad. Super bad anyway. And the only thing kept us alive was artillery and air. And they just beat they were just all night. You can't say enough about that, especially that artillery battalion or battery was back in another LZ they called Falcon. And all night we fought, and then come daylight, we got orders that backed off, and we got orders to have a mad minute. That was what fire full magazine cyclic, just out. And then we did that, and then my particular unit started out, we were supposed to go 75 yards ahead, out. And we started taking fire. We got a couple of guys killed, and so we pulled back, and then they called in the airstrikes. They called in napalm. It was 20 millimeter cannons and napalm. And to tell them where we were, we threw smoke grenades out ahead of us. Just threw them as far ahead of us as we could. And it was fairly sparse jungle. It wasn't thick jungle like you used to think about a Panama or somewhere like that. But they had grass was hip high. And anyway, they dropped that napalm in those 20 millimeter cannons after. And then we made our sweep and fixed bayonets on an M16. The bayonet's about that long. And we went out again. We went out that 75 yards and set up a perimeter. Then we sent a few of us back, and I understand that they don't do this anymore, but they sent us back to collect intelligence off these bodies, off the body of these dead. These were North Vietnamese regular soldiers. They weren't Viet Cong. And we went back and gathered up papers and things. And when I was coming out, before this, I'd seen a body move, and I'd fired a burst into it. I mean, he was alive, I guess. Anyway, I hit that body again. I'd take the intelligence off that body. And it was a little kid, looks like he's about 14, 15 years old, little. I've seen pictures of those Vietnamese. They were small, young looking people. I found a picture of wallet with him. He had a wallet, and he had some letters in it, and he had pictures of two older people and a young woman. And that struck me as that humanized them. That humanized the enemy. Before that, they were gooks and slopes and subhuman. They weren't really people, they were just BC and so forth. But anyway, I got pulled out that afternoon to a place called Camp Holloway. In the meantime, there were a bunch of other units that moved in with us. And the 1st to 7th Cav and B Company 2nd 7th Cav got pulled back to Camp Holloway. And the rest of them were going to march out to two different LZs. One was called Columbus and one was called Albany. And now you got to remember, these people have been awake for 50 hours or more. And they spent that night, they were on alert all night, and then the next day they took off across country to this next other LZ. Well, they got ambushed. It wasn't really an ambush, but they were in a battle. They were surrounded by North Vietnamese regulars, and they were. What I hear, what I understand, what I saw when I came back there was they were scattered out for 500 or 600 yards. It was a battalion, and the story is that when they stopped, they'd captured two Viet Cong or Vietnamese prisoners. And so the CO, battalion commander, called all the company commanders up front, up the head of the column where he was, to interrogate this prisoner, or these prisoners. And in the meantime, they got attacked with no officers there. And they really got beat up bad. And then we got called, just the B Company, 2nd, 7th Cav, got called to come back. So we had to go back to Albany, and it was dusk. It was dusk, and we were flying in, and you could see, when we flew in, you could see the people in khaki. You could see dead people over here and dead people here. And we landed. We didn't land. We hovered and we jumped out. We fired anything to the right's enemy and anything to go left. Anything to the right, shoot anything to the right, go left. We went into that perimeter, and I remember going into that perimeter. I remember this guy grabbing me and wanting me to do something with him. I mean, he was injured bad. He was hurt pretty bad. He had his bone sticking out of his leg. He grabbed me and he wanted me to help him. And then I don't remember. I do not remember. I don't know how long I don't remember. I know when I landed at Albany, I was carrying an M79 grenade launcher. Next thing I remember was, I don't know, somewhere in 30, 40 hours later, I was in a bunch of us. We were hauling a man on a poncho. 4 guys had a corners of a poncho, had a dead guy on it, and I got shot in my leg, and it knocked me down. And that's the first thing I remember. And this dead guy come rolling off that poncho, going, he's full of gas. And then I went to the CP where they were doing triage. They were treating people, getting them ready, stabilizing, getting to evacuate them, and had this little owie on my leg, and I felt ashamed of myself. I went in there, and the medic cleaned it up, and he put a bandage on it, and he asked me if I wanted morphine, and I was afraid of morphine, afraid it'd make me too groggy, and I didn't want to be. And so I said no, and so I went back to my unit, and I was a kind of a secretary. And then we pulled out, and it was another weird thing they did. They sent us back into trucks. There was a battalion of us, and we'd taken so many casualties. They sent a battalion back in 3 deuce-and-a-half trucks. And that was more scary than landing at that LZ, because we was going down this road, jungle on either side, and didn't know what was going to happen to it. And we got home all right, I guess. And then there was no big deal. I was put on, this fight lasted 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th of November. And the 13th of December, I was home. That's how long I had to decompress. And the reason I came, one of the big reasons I came here is because that book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young, the co-author of that, Joseph Galloway, is going to be here tomorrow. And I want to meet the man and shake his hand. I met him before, but I remember him, but he doesn't, he wouldn't remember me. That was the way it is, and I want to meet him again and shake his hand. And just a little side note, the only man I knew in Vietnam from Wyoming was a young man named Ernie Taylor. He was from KC, and he got killed in the Ia Drang Valley. And I guess that's my story. Well, I will say something. Can I say one more thing? I was 45 years hiding the fact that I was nuts. I didn't know what PTSD was. I didn't realize I had it. And finally, one of my nephews was a Gulf War veteran. He come back and he said, "Uncle Steve, you got PTSD." I told him, come on. So I went in and I started getting treatment. And I would suggest anybody even suspects anything like that, go get counseling and some treatment, because it's opened my life up for me. I mean, my eyes are open. It's not like I'm not. Well, I was kind of ashamed. I was ashamed, and I don't know. I just didn't like myself very well, because the reaction. I could hold a job, but I could never get promoted in a job because I'd always picking fights or something like that for years, and I'm now over that now. I'm not doing that now.
Just any words you have on this event that they're having this weekend? What do you think this means to everybody?
Pardon me?
The event here, the welcome home.
Oh yeah, that's part of my therapy. I couldn't come in here 3 years ago. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have stand in the crowd. That's part of my therapy, is telling my story. Telling my story that I hid. My wife didn't know about it for 40 years. And facing some of my triggers and my fears, like there's unreasonable fears and there's silly fears, like crowds, the smell of fireworks, the cadence of an Asian language. You have a cadence of Asian language as a trigger. Tall grass is a trigger, and so I'm trying to overcome these triggers so they don't bother me anymore.